Hello, and thank you for listening to RENEWables, a podcast by BioStar, which aims to explore the current and future energy landscape in America.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to RENEWables. I'm your host, Senior Vice President of Sales, David Smart at BioStar RENEWables. We are very pleased to have Jason Ellsworth, the Organic Portfolio Manager from Wilbur-Ellis, with us today. We're going to talk organic farming, the growth of organics, and all the different things that Wilbur-Ellis does to serve the organic and conventional markets, but we're going to talk a lot about organics today. Jason, thank you so much for making the time. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We've known each other for some time now, but for our listeners and viewers, if you don't mind just giving a little background about yourself and how you came to be working at Wilbur-Ellis and in the organic space.
Yeah, you bet. So I worked for the University of Idaho for 5 years. I was a soil fertility specialist, focused on precision ag and just soil fertility in southern Idaho, working with potatoes, sugar beets, wheat, corn, alfalfa, and was doing some precision ag. And then about more than 15 years ago, a little more than 15 years ago, came on with Wilbur-Ellis as the field technology specialist in the Pacific Northwest, and managed our precision ag efforts in that part of the country. And then for a while was part of our software as we built out AgVerdict, which is our platform for handling customer and sales agronomy data for the grower. And then for the last 5 years, I have been managing our organic portfolio. So the products that have a Wilbur-Ellis name on them that are approved for organic use.
Fabulous. Yeah. And you touched on a couple different places there inside of Wilbur-Ellis that you've worked. Tell us a little bit more about the company, size, geography, the crops. I know you all obviously serve the conventional and organic markets, but download our viewers and listeners a little bit more on Wilbur-Ellis and what it is that you all do.
Yeah, you bet. So Wilbur-Ellis is a family-owned company. It's been around for 100 years. We celebrated our 100th anniversary last year. Wilbur-Ellis is actually made of 5 divisions. The largest is the Agribusiness, but we have a animal nutrition, large and small animal nutrition division. We have a trading company that mostly operates in the Pacific Rim area. We have a liquid fertilizer company called Nature's, and then we have an investment arm called Caballo Ventures. But the ag business one, or the company as a whole, does about $3.3 billion in annual sales. We have 4,400 employees. Have offices in more than 20 countries in the world. The ag business division is the largest of the 5 divisions with about $2.1 billion in sales. There's 2,700 employees. 650 of those would be sales agronomists, field sales agronomists. We have 160 branches in 20 states in the U.S. Mostly, we call it the horseshoe, but if you go around the edge of the United States, from Michigan, Minnesota, around through the Pacific Northwest, California, Arizona, and then over to Texas, that's kind of been our bread and butter, the specialty markets. But the last 20 years, 25 years, we've really made a strong investment in the center of the state and building out our row crop market. So we have an office or retail office in about every state west of the Mississippi, and then several that border the Mississippi, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio. So
excellent. Not a small company, and servicing all kinds of crops kind of across the spectrum. Talk a little bit about, I'm curious how long Wilbur-Ellis has been serving the organic markets, but talk a little bit about both personally and from the Wilbur-Ellis standpoint, why do organics?
Oh yeah, good question. So of all the things you can do in agriculture, organic farming is one of the ones that's most closest represents what we learned in school about agronomy. To be an organic grower, to be an organic field consultant, you really have to understand the agronomy of how things work, the soil, the plant, the insects, the weeds. We don't have the luxury of scouting a field, seeing a problem, going into the barn, getting a product, making an application and solving the problem. We have to put things in motion and do things long before we've even planted the seed to ensure that we have a good crop, a successful crop. And so you get to really use all the agronomy that you learned. And so that makes it a challenge. But Wilbur-Ellis is a company, we've always had organic products that were approved for organic use. But it's just been the last few years where we've really put a sustained focus on not only the products, but also working with organic growers. And we have several sales agronomists in the field that call on organic customers and have spent a lot of time in working with those growers and learning the system and in helping them. And then they come to us and say, hey, these are some product ideas. These are some things that we need. And then as a portfolio manager, one of my main responsibilities is bringing those, finding that product for them. Now, we, as a distributor, we sell a lot of organic products. I mean, anything that's on the market, we distribute. But the branded products, ones I'm responsible for, are ones that we put a lot of extra attention to in terms of research and in marketing, in order to understand how those products work alone, but also how they work in a program. And we know that in the organic agriculture, these programs, both on nutrition and pest control, an integrated program for both of those is a key. And so we spend a lot of time in research understanding those programs and how those products work together. And then that makes our sales agronomists successful in working with the grower and solving the problems that grower has.
Are you seeing a lot of growth? Are you seeing a lot of customers that maybe started with, 500 acres or 1,000 acres, and they're continuing to convert, land over to organic production? Talk a little bit about some of the growth you see.
Yeah, and the largest area of that is in the Midwest. I mean, we're seeing and hearing about growers that are transitioning large acreages over. And one of the challenges is we had it's been 6 years ago, maybe it's only been 5, where we had a couple of boats come in of soybeans that started out conventional, and somewhere on the ocean they became organic, and so there's the frustration with the fraud of products that are claiming to be organic and aren't, and so if growers in the U.S. are saying, well, hey, we'll fill that gap, and so they're transitioning soybeans and corn to organic, and that's been the largest by far. But we're still seeing increases in vegetables and trees and fruits as we figure out better ways of fertilizing and taking care of pests and enabling these growers to be successful. All of that's still growing, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
Well, it's really exciting, and we're seeing the same thing. Of course, a lot of our listeners and viewers know we make an organic fertilizer product, and when we started making that product, almost a little over a decade ago, it was really, really focused in fruits and vegetables, and there's a lot of excitement around our business as we see the same thing you are. A lot of the small grains and a lot of the Midwest, acres being transitioned. Mm-hmm. You touched a little bit on some of the challenges that you face. One thing I think is so cool about your job, and we've talked about this, and hard about your job, is that you might have a product that you think is really good, and you're going to fit it into this program, say in Ohio, but that product, fits differently in a different program in Arizona or California. And so having to understand the different parts of the country, the different soils, it's really complex, what you all do, and developing these programs with your growers. So talk about that. Talk about some of the other kind of challenges with respect to organic production.
Oh, well, the challenge is understanding agronomy. And sometimes we take for granted things that we thought we knew, and Mother Nature has a way of saying, no, that's not how I work. And so understanding that, I tell people, look, every grower in the country has a spreadsheet, a piece of paper, a napkin somewhere where they've tried to pencil out, is it worth it transitioning over to organic? And sometimes it's there's one thing, or sometimes it's a myriad of things that prevent them from making that jump. And one of them is, the product that you mentioned is a fertilizer, a particular fertilizer, that they need, or maybe it's a good weed control or an insect control product. And so it's, as we figure those things out and bring those things to market, that's just one more grower that it checks that box that says, okay, I think I have the tools I need to be successful. And so what are the challenges? It's any one grower, it's the thing that they find most important, that it prevents them from making that jump. And so it's trying to understand what those needs are and finding a product that meets that. And, it may be hardware, it could be a piece of equipment, it could be climate, they're just not in an area that's conducive, or there's a lot of different challenges, and it's sure. And the challenge and the fun thing about it is trying to figure out what those are and help them figure that out and do something so that they can be as successful in their farming.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And there's a lot to know. I'm certainly not an agronomist, but I always hang out with Alan Philo and kind of try to be a sponge around him, learning as much about this stuff as I can. One thing we talk a lot about, and we're doing a lot of research on here at BioStar, and I know a lot of folks are working on right now, it's a hot topic, is soil health. And just curious, some of your observations of the effects of organics on soils and the surrounding ecosystems, and how, is organics really good for soil health? I'd love to hear kind of your take on that.
No, a lot of the things that we recommend for people to do in organic farming are not tied or specific to organic farming. They're practices that I think everybody should be using. When we talk about soil health, the factors that really and truly influence soil health are tillage, how much or how little or what, rotations, crop rotations, cover crops, the way we manage our irrigation, and all of that are really the key factors that influence the soil and good soil health. And if we manage that, that's just good soil science. It's just good agronomy, independent of organic or conventional farming. And those are things that people should be doing anyway, all the time. And now, can everybody do it the same? No, because as you move from the East Coast to the West Coast, there's changes in soil texture and type, there's changes in soil moisture and precipitation, and those limit the things that you can do. But there are things that all of us can do independent in relation to tillage, rotations, and cover crop that will get us to a point where we have a good, healthy soil that is sustainable for the long term, meaning that I can continue to have a high level of productivity for the things that I'm growing above the soil and things that I'm growing below the soil for generations, and am a positive impact on the environment.
Absolutely. I appreciate the answer. And, just curious too, just on kind of the surrounding ecosystems. One thing I've found really fascinating is I've learned more about this and studied more about soil health, is just how everything really ties together, and it really is kind of one big circle. You sort of alluded to it, but talk a little bit about how good, healthy soil can positively, or I guess the opposite, can negatively, if it's not good, healthy soil, impact, the surrounding ecosystems.
As far as soil health, we have, some good examples just in history as we look in areas of the world that have been farmed for thousands of years, and where they're at today, and the effort that it's going to take to get those back into production. So we know that there are some things that we can do better if we're going to be humble enough to learn from history. But again, a lot of these things, it's not just organic farming, it's just common soil, common sense for soil, for plants, on things that we do, and so as we expand it out, in addition to tillage, rotations, cover crops, we have things like buffer strips, nutrient management, preventing the movement of soil off our fields, trying to keep our water, within the soil profile, all of that. I've had the opportunity to participate in some work that some folks were doing in California, where we were looking at some beneficial insect habitat planted in and amongst some of the rows of vegetable crops, and seeing the increase in beneficial insects and the decrease in some of these negative or predatory insects that harm the crop, and increases in pollinators and things like that. And so we see more of that in organic farming, because there's some, there's the philosophy behind that, there's the requirements within your SOP that you have to do, but it shouldn't just be organic. It should just be the things that we do and the way that we farm. And yeah, we've got to, we'll make some adaptations from one region to another, but that whole thing, what we do in our field is related or affects everything else around us. And there's some things that we can do better. There's some, we've been, we're doing a lot of things like the 4Rs for nutrient management. That's been a huge thing, and it's not like it's new. We've just, put some marketing and some branding behind it, but it's things that, we taught in our soil science classes and for years, and we know, and now it just, put it in a concise way that it makes sense. And so
what are the 4Rs?
So the right product, okay, in the right place, at the right rate, and at the right time. Awesome. And we often hear about it in relation to fertilizers and nutrition, but all of our pesticide products, all of those things, we can subscribe to that philosophy. And and it's not new, it's just we've got to be doing it better and improve on the things that we've been doing in the past, and take credit for what we've done, but let's get better. Let's do this better. And organics has a lot of things that we can incorporate across agriculture in general.
Sure. Talk about, obviously, and we've tracked the growth of the organic market at BioStar, obviously. But talk about, there's a lot of, we associate fast growth, I think, well, at least I do, with that's a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. And that's good, but what are some of the challenges that fast growth brings? I know, everybody's had a really hard time the last couple of years with COVID and with supply chain issues. Now inflation, we're seeing, some really high prices for fertilizers and other products. Talk about some of those challenges of growing fast, or a market growing fast, and I guess how Wilbur-Ellis, can help aim to solve or mitigate some of those challenges.
Yeah, and you talk about inflation and especially in regards to nutrition. When you look at the price of fertilizer as it's continues to increase, and demand, is increasing and supply is less. there are more people are interested in manure and looking at manure.
Mm-hmm.
And so now all of a sudden you have these organic growers who are competing with conventional growers for that same manure that, that they didn't have any, those organic growers didn't have any problem getting. And now that's become a key nutrient source, for nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, as well as for the soil health benefits of that. And so this growth, you have more people, and then with everything else on top of it, or more growers and everything else on top of it, the manure is getting more expensive. There's challenges with that. The transition time, I think people are beginning to really see the value of organics. I think the market is there, and so there's some place that they can take their produce, but you have a 3-year transition time.
Mm-hmm.
There's not very much ground anymore that you can just pull out and go right into organic. Most of our ground is being farmed, and so has that 3-year transition. So that's a big challenge. One of the other things that we're seeing is that more of these box stores are trying to make organic products more competitive, and so trying to decrease that gap between conventional produce and organic produce. And so as the organic prices come down, it makes it less sustainable and less appealing for growers. And so that will be a challenge. But I think people have, the number of acres that we see coming in, I think people have weighed that and decided that that's not a big issue. But the transition time is a challenge. The number of products. One of the things that, one of the common fertilizers that we're seeing now, in addition to manure, is people are using the protein hydrolysates. And those are short supply. They're hard to get over from, overseas, wherever they're from. They're getting expensive, and so, and then there's always the question about sustainability of using fish. And as production increases, as the levels of production, as more acres come in, all of those things there's going to be a demand for all of those things. And so, there's some societal and some ethical sustainability things that we need to figure out and understand for this really to continue to grow like we want it to.
That's awesome. Thank you for all of that. It's been, we've been watching the manure price. I actually follow, or the fertilizer pricing, excuse me. And we follow I have on all of our social accounts, we follow a lot of farm influencers, which there are more and more of these days. And they're really fun to follow because they give you really interesting, insights into their day-to-day lives and practices and all the things that they do to be sustainable. And I think our listeners and viewers who aren't in the ag space, a lot of them are, but those who aren't, I think as you kind of dig in and follow some of these farmers, you just find more and more that really farmers are probably the most sustainable people in our whole country or world. They don't ever want to waste anything, right? They're always looking for ways to reduce, reuse, recycle, and gain efficiencies. And that's been really cool for me to follow. This one gal the other day posted, why people complaining about the price of eggs. And well, here are all the different things that, I need to use to raise the chickens, and showing the price increases that they've seen across their farm. And it's just amazing. So, I mean, made me feel a little bit better about, the $8.99 or whatever it was I paid for eggs last weekend. So, but follow BioStar Renewables, follow Wilbur-Ellis online if you don't already. And we share a lot of those really cool farmfluencers. I call them farmfluencer accounts, who give awesome insights into the ag industry and all the good things that our farmers in our country do. As we wrap up here, Jason, just tell our listeners and viewers how to find you online and how to find Wilbur-Ellis. We'll include links and social profiles to the extent they're available in the show notes. How can people keep in touch with you online?
So on the web, it's just wilburellis.com. And then if you search Wilbur-Ellis on LinkedIn, Instagram, or Twitter, we have social media accounts. We have both for the corporate Wilbur-Ellis and then for the Agribusiness division. Those are all separate. those are the easiest way. Just Wilbur-Ellis.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. This has been really, really interesting. We hope you'll come back on the show. This has been another episode of Renewables. Again, I'm your host, David Smart, and Jason Ellsworth. Thank you so much for making the time, and thank you for the episode.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. And for our listeners and followers who are listening right now, please remember to hit the follow button, follow so that you stay up to date with our podcasts. We have a great second season underway. We're right in the middle of, so a lot of good episodes coming. And we appreciate everybody tuning in. This has been another episode of Renewables. Thank you.
Hello, and thank you for listening to Renewables, a podcast by BioStar, which aims to explore the current and future energy landscape in America.